But right now, let's get back into the Commanders. So they play the Giants on Sunday. This is their shot. This is the opportunity they've got. You could pull off a sizable upset, obviously, moving forward at some point, playing the Eagles twice, playing the Cowboys. But, Danny, if they're going to get a win right here, right now, as a couple of point underdogs on the road against a 2-11 Giants team, they are multi-point underdogs on the road against a 2-11 Giants team. This is the chance to do it.
It's their best opportunity, right? This is the worst team on their schedule. They're eyeball to eyeball with these Giants, by the way. The Giants have played better football recently, more often, I think, than Washington has, but that's a narrow margin in favor of New York. They've got juice. They're exciting. They're still ascending, even though the ascent hasn't taken them very high, but they've got their pieces. They got Scatterbo. They got Jackson Dart. There's reason for optimism, whereas Washington is in their cascade. They're in their falling down the mountain from last year. It's like finding the soul stone there on Vormir. They're just sacrificing themselves so someone else can get well. It's bad right here in Washington. So they're looking for a handhold so everybody gets to feel better about themselves, and the Giants are their best shot.
There was a time weeks ago when a caller suggested they were going to lose out, and I said, come on, man. You know how hard it is? I don't know what it would have been at that time, but to lose 11 in a row or whatever to end the season, that does not happen. This team is not that bad. It's bad, but it's not that bad. If you don't beat the Giants, there is a very real chance that they will not have won a game since October 5th when this season ends, that they will have gone 12 consecutive games over 13 weeks, that they will go 3+ months without winning a football game. I jokingly put together a graphic about, who the president was and what the price of milk and gasoline was the last time they won. Lest we forget that Chargers game, the first part of that game was also a debacle. They were down 10-0.
On the way to 17?
The Chargers were in the red zone driving when they fumbled, or else they lose that game. They lost the Falcons before that. They'd be 2-11 right now, just like the Giants, and they will have lost, if not for that win, 10 straight games instead of the 8 that they're sitting at this point. They would have a chance at 14 consecutive losses, if not for turning it around that afternoon. But it's Giants, Eagles, Cowboys, Eagles the rest of the way. 4 games all in the division. Here is the question I want to pose, because I think you and I are going to be on different sides of this.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm guessing that the split within the fan base is going to be pretty intense and severe as well. Let's make this our Metropolitan Moving and Storage poll of the day. Metropolitan Moving and Storage, local, long-distance, residential, commercial. 3 decades best-in-class service and experience. You get to touch a button, and whatever button you touch is what happens. The Commanders either win or lose their game this weekend. They either beat the Giants or they lose to the Giants. Now, you would say, why on earth, if you're a fan of the team, would you say lose? Well, you'd say lose because you want them to protect the number 6 pick. You want them to have a chance to move up the board. They have one, that's it, one less win, 1 game back from the number 1 overall pick, which is currently held by the Giants. They would catch them in this game. Now, there are another
a lot of bodies to climb over
4
there.
teams
Yeah.
that they have to worry about that they probably won't catch, that are all going to lose likely this weekend. So they would move up from 6 to 5, but it keeps you alive. It keeps you climbing. So that's why you'd say lose, because this win doesn't get you anywhere in the standings. It doesn't mean anything, and the draft pick improves. The other side of this is someone going, well, wait a second. All that matters is next year's draft pick. Why on earth would you want him to win? And the argument is because it's bad for business if you keep losing. It's bad for culture. It's bad for everything. So, Danny, I'll start with you. You're touching a button. Are the Commanders beating the Giants, or is the losing streak running to 9?
Oh, lose immediately. Lose so much. Lose in, horrendous fashion. Who has the fewest amount of draft picks in the 2026 NFL draft?
I haven't done the math yet. Washington had the fewest in 25. I know they've got the fewest in the first 4 rounds. They might have the fewest overall.
Yeah, they're among the fewest. How do you get draft capital? Finish poorly, have a good draft pick, and maybe be able to trade that draft pick. That's what everyone should be rooting for. This is done. All the players that we are going to feel good for if they get a win are not going to be here next year. I want no one to. That's the pragmatic part of it. Is if you root for them to win, then you want to give back Jaden Daniels, right? Because you don't get him without losing all those games that they lost the year that led to them being able to draft Jaden Daniels being at number 2 overall. You don't kind of see the direct relationship there, right? Where you finish bad enough, then you got the godsend at quarterback. This is how you get more good players. You complain about the roster, rightfully so, by the way. Here's how you improve the roster right here, this way, just like this, by losing. Empty calories, end of season, September baseball wins mean nothing other than to people that are already here who have given you nothing but disappointment all season long. Now to the emotional part of it. I always root for this. When something is disastrous, people are always ducking for cover. They're trying to justify. They're trying to shed the light somewhere else. They're hoping that you don't notice how bad it was. I can't have empty wins when the season is no longer in the balance. Again, it's September baseball. That's what we're doing right now, the final quarter of the season. These empty calorie, meaningless wins so that a couple people that won't be here anymore get to pat themselves on the back. I don't care about that. I hope they lose them all.
So I'm on the other side of this one. 800-636-1067. We'll take your calls on this. I am almost always on that team. And over the years as a show, if you go back at some very high rate, 90+%, I would imagine I'm advocating for some of the same principles that you just were. I feel differently this time. You have the quarterback. That's the difference. Everyone says, well, why did it matter? You did some kind of reference where if you are cool with the win now, then you don't get to enjoy Jaden Daniels or something. They have Jaden Daniels. They have the quarterback. So when they didn't have one, then in a draft coming up where Daniels was available and Williams was available and May was available and Penix was available and Nix was available and McCarthy was available, obviously the higher up the board you went with all those teams needing quarterbacks, the better. And because if you weren't going to take a quarterback, which you should, you could trade back and there'd be a million teams trying to come up to get one of those guys. Every draft is different. Every year is different. So the fact that you now have a quarterback does not change that picking earlier is better. That's always the case. The higher up the board they are, the better, for sure. But like anything, like we talk about playing Jaden Daniels or not, nobody would suggest he doesn't benefit from playing. The question is the juice worth the squeeze? Is the downside of him risking an injury worth the upside of him playing? And similarly here, is the downside that would come from another loss worth accepting for moving up the draft board? And it's very reasonable if somebody says, absolutely. I happen to believe this time that a win is a real necessity in that building. I think from a sheer culture building standpoint, because here's the problem. If Dan Quinn's job's on the line or there was a chance he could get fired, I wouldn't feel this way. He is absolutely coming back, and he should. Adam Peters is coming back, and he should. If they're coming back definitively, I think they are, another loss gets you to a point where we're entering into the territory when you lose 9, 10, 11, 12 in a row, more so than as of a week ago or right now or a week from now. When they pile up, you start questioning everything. Dan Quinn loses the locker room. I don't think you get it back. You know, if guys start to say, I'm not sure anymore if this is the right guy for the job. You go through the motions all offseason. You run it back next year. There's a different roster, as you said, with new players coming in here. But a lot of these guys are still around. And if that doubt starts to seep in, it's like a relationship. When you start looking at your wife different or your girlfriend different, you can't get that back. So I worry a little bit about the big picture of this program. If you can lose 12 in a row, if you can go 13, 14 weeks without winning a football game, I think it could do some irreparable damage. I think it could really turn this thing toxic internally. And if it's true that they can't make major changes this offseason, or can't is the wrong word, they're not going to, then that carries into next year for me. So those are some of my concerns. The other part of this, and the bigger part maybe, is just the draft, where you have the quarterback. You don't need the quarterback anymore. They're not going to be drafting a QB. Doesn't mean you don't want to be 3 instead of 5. But I don't know for sure that you're able to trade back necessarily. And picking 3 versus 6 may not make a big difference based on what they want or need if they're not able to trade back. I was just talking to somebody in the league yesterday about how badly I think they need to trade back. And they say, I got bad news for you. This may not be a year based on the quarterback class.
It might be, yeah.
Where unless you're, with the number 1 overall pick, let's say, it might be really, really hard to trade back. Well, if that's the case, that changes the import of being a couple picks higher. In fact, they brought up this idea. I thought this was interesting. They're like, it might actually be a lot easier to trade back from 7 than 3, from all you know. Because like going all the way up to 3, if you have the 11th pick as an example,
will cost you a lot
You know,
more.
exactly. Like you're
I
not
see.
willing to go all the way up to 3, but you're willing because there's a defensive lineman you like or a tackle you like or something. You're trying to get into the 7-8 range. And their point is it might not be easy, any different or easier to trade back the higher up you are. Now, depending on where you're trading to, you might be able to get more value from higher up. But I think it's a lot of unknowns. It's a lot of hypotheticals in this draft that might not actually come to fruition. So, based on all of that, I'm not hoping that they rip off a winning streak. Like, if they won 2 more games, I think that could be damaging. I think a win, we're talking about a pick or 2 at most at the end of the year, probably. Even if it's 3 picks and you're picking 8 instead of 5. I think the idea that you didn't go 3+ months into the offseason without a win maybe changes the perception a little bit internally of just looking at your boss going, does this guy know what he's talking about at all? I keep doing everything he's saying and we're losing. But I want to see what people think about this. We'll give you our poll results in a moment. You get to touch a button. Danny's hitting the lose button. I'm going to hit the win button, but it would only be for this game, by the way. Eagles, Cowboys, Eagles. I want 1 and 3 the rest of the way. So I'm picking the 2 and 11 Giants as my big victory.